My name is Elara, and at 28, I thought graduating college would finally make me feel seen. Instead, it made me invisible to the only family I had left. It should have been the proudest moment of my life, but it turned into the day they disowned me, in front of hundreds of people. My father, well, the man I thought was my father, stood up and said I wasn't his daughter. Not really. Not anymore. They always said, "You should be grateful we took you in." But gratitude doesn't grow in silence, especially not when you're raised to feel like a secret. Before I tell you what I did next, how I turned their cruelty into something they never saw coming, tap the like button if you've ever been pushed aside while someone else got the spotlight. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please do. It tells me someone's still listening. They say graduation is the proudest day of your life. For me, it was the day everything I believed about my family shattered. The lights in the Willow Creek Auditorium buzzed softly above, casting a warm halo over the sea of folding chairs and proud parents. My palms were damp, clutched around the edges of my program, the college seal embossed in gold. I could still hear Thalia's voice in my head, soft, full of love, telling me I'd make it here one day. I stood as they called my name, Elara Vance, with honors. The applause felt distant, muffled. I spotted him in the third row, Victor Drace in a crisp navy suit, eyes cold as granite. Beside him, Celine adjusted baby Orion's blanket with mechanical precision, her lips twitching like she was suppressing a smirk. I took one step toward the stage, then he rose. Victor. Without a microphone, his voice still cut clean through the crowd. "Don't bother clapping," he said. "She won't be needing congratulations. She's not my daughter. Not anymore." The crowd froze. Laughter. Somewhere someone laughed out of sheer disbelief. Phones whipped up like reflexes. Flashlights. Gasps. My feet felt glued to the carpet, but my spine locked straight. I didn't look at Victor. I looked at Celine. Her face had drained of color, her hand gripping the pew's edge so tightly her knuckles gleamed white. I caught the flicker in her eyes. Panic? Or guilt? I didn't cry. Instead, I reached for the diploma they tried to hand me. My fingers didn't tremble, not outwardly, but inside, something cracked open. Something I didn't even know was still breakable. That wasn't just rejection, it was an execution. He didn't just cut me off financially. He exiled me, publicly, brutally. But what Victor didn't know, what none of them knew, was that I had stopped needing him a long time ago. The moment Thalia died, and he moved Celine into our home, something in me began preparing for this day. I sat back down, holding my diploma like it was both a weapon and a shield. The whispers swirled around me like smoke. Celine turned her face away, as if even she couldn't watch what she'd orchestrated. The air in the auditorium was thick, hot with shame, thick with judgment. But I let it settle over me like armor, because I had something they didn't expect. I had a plan. I don't remember the walk back to my car, just the weight of silence. Just the echo of Victor's words seared behind my eyes. "You're not my daughter anyway." I should have been crushed. Maybe a part of me was, but another part was strangely calm, focused. The Elara that left the auditorium that day wasn't the same girl who walked in hoping for a round of applause and a family dinner afterward. That Elara was gone. This one had secrets of her own. And that smile I forced as I passed the camera crews, it wasn't just for show, it was the beginning. I don't remember driving home after the graduation, just the sound of the blinker clicking in an empty intersection and the soft hum of rain against the windshield. The kind of rain that smelled like summer asphalt and old regrets. I parked, turned off the engine, and just sat there. Eyes locked on the porch light of a house that never really felt like mine. It used to. Back when Thalia was alive. I don't say mom anymore, not since Victor corrected me. She wasn't your real mother anyway. But in every way that counted, she was. I walked inside and let the door click shut behind me. The house was quiet, sterile almost. Cold gray walls, crystal vases positioned just right. Celine's taste, flawless and lifeless. My heels echoed against the tile as I headed upstairs. My old room hadn't changed much. Still the faded lavender walls and bookshelves packed tight with things I was supposed to grow out of. The bed creaked as I sat, but my thoughts were already slipping back. To another room, A warmer one, the way Thalia's quilt smelled of lavender and cough drops. Her pale hands against the pillow, the TV flickering some late-night comedy neither of us watched. I was 15. "You always look for the truth, Elara," she'd whispered that night, voice frayed like a loose thread. "Even when it hurts." Her fingers trembled as she reached for the nightstand and pulled out a tiny velvet pouch. I still remember the way she pressed it into my palm. The metal locket inside was cool, simple. No stones, just old gold and something inside that clicked faintly when shaken. I stared at her, confused. She didn't explain. She just touched my cheek and said, "You'll understand one day. Just keep it safe." I had. For a while. Until the funeral. Until Celine and Victor swept through like a storm, boxing things, donating others. I never saw the locket again. But I felt its absence. Like a splinter in my memory I couldn't dig out. And now, with Victor's words still echoing, "You're not my daughter anyway," that splinter began to fester. I lay back on my bed, staring at the ceiling fan spinning slow above me. My thoughts drifted to the letter I'd once found in Thalia's desk. A list of names, some crossed out, some circled, one scribbled in different ink and underlined twice. Jorah. It made no sense back then, still didn't. But now, I couldn't shake the feeling that name meant something more. Downstairs I heard voices, Celine's laugh, sharp and empty, Victor's low mutter, a clink of glass. They were celebrating, toasting my exile. My stomach tightened. I crept down the hallway, barefoot on the hardwood floor. At the end of the hall was Thalia's old bedroom, now Victor and Celine's. The door was half open, just like it used to be, when Thalia would call me in to sit beside her and braid my hair. The same lamp still stood on the dresser, but the warmth was gone. I stepped inside. Everything smelled like Celine now. Roses and bleach. I opened the jewelry box on the dresser. Nothing. Just rows of earrings and polished brooches. Then the drawer, empty. The closet. Half of it was filled with suits, the other half with flowing blouses and high-end scarves. But on the top shelf, tucked behind a faded shoebox, I spotted something. My breath caught. The velvet pouch. I pulled it down, my fingers shaking. The locket was still inside. I opened it. No picture. But tucked beneath the lining was a tiny folded note. "Blood doesn't define truth. Keep looking." I sat on the edge of the bed, heart pounding. My fingertips brushed the worn crease of the note again and again. Blood doesn't define truth. What truth was she protecting me from? Footsteps in the hall. I stuffed the pouch into my pocket and rose just as Celine appeared in the doorway, holding a wine glass, her expression perfectly unreadable. "What are you doing in here?" she asked, tilting her head slightly. "Just remembering," I replied. She studied me for a second too long. Her eyes drifted toward my hand. "You know, Elara, rummaging through other people's things isn't a good look, especially not after today." I didn't answer. She stepped into the room, setting the glass on the nightstand with a little clink. "Victor's hurt, you know. He tried his best with you." I almost laughed. "He made that clear," I said, voice barely above a whisper. She moved closer, brushing an invisible speck off the dresser. "We gave you a home. We gave you opportunity. And this resentment of yours, it's ugly." I looked her straight in the eyes. "Did you take the locket after Thalia died?" A flicker. She recovered fast. "What locket?" My silence was answer enough. She stepped back, tone cooler. "You've always been dramatic, Elara. Thalia spoiled you, filled your head with sentiment and fairy tales." "No," I said softly. She tried to protect me. Celine's lips curved. Not a smile. Something closer to disdain. "From what exactly?" I didn't respond. She turned and walked out, her final words echoing down the hall. "Some things are better left buried." I stood there long after she was gone. The locket felt heavy in my pocket. But it wasn't the metal that weighed on me. It was the truth I didn't yet understand. Victor's rejection wasn't spontaneous. Celine's coldness wasn't incidental. And Talia's warnings weren't just the delusions of a dying woman. They were a map, and I was finally ready to follow it. The library was always quiet on Sunday mornings, the kind of quiet that settled deep into your bones, like fog that never quite lifted. Dust floated lazily through slants of soft light coming through the arched windows. Somewhere in the back, an old ceiling fan hummed, struggling to spin. I liked it that way. Still, predictable, unlike my life. I was shelving donations, boxes of old paperbacks, half-used notebooks, and a set of encyclopedias no one had touched since the early 2000s. I bent over a cracked cardboard box at the end of the aisle, the musty scent of old ink rising up like a memory. That's when I saw it. A deep green leather-bound book tucked between two water-damaged yearbooks, slim, worn, its corners curled slightly inward. I reached for it with cautious fingers, brushing off a layer of fine dust. My breath caught. Thalia's name, etched faintly on the cover in gold script, faded but unmistakable. I stared at it for a full 10 seconds before I opened the cover. Or tried to. It was locked. A small brass clasp held it shut, worn smooth with time. No key in sight. I turned it over in my hands, heart thudding faster with every second. The edges of the leather were scuffed, but the spine was firm, intact. She had written this. Thalia. What was it doing in a donation bin? I looked over my shoulder. The reading room was still empty, just rows of silent chairs and a crooked bulletin board full of forgotten events. I slipped the diary into my tote bag and zipped it shut, my hands slightly shaking. The locket in my pocket felt heavier all of a sudden. I took the rest of my shift in a daze, eyes scanning barcodes and stacking returns, but my thoughts were somewhere else entirely. That diary wasn't just a journal, it was a message, hidden, protected, left behind for me to find. But why now? Back at my apartment, I sat cross-legged on the floor with the diary in front of me. My lamp cast a yellow halo over the carpet, the air still thick with the smell of peppermint tea I hadn't touched. The clasp didn't budge. I turned the book over again, running my finger along the spine. No writing, no markings, but on the inside edge of the back cover, almost hidden beneath the lining, I felt something hard, like metal beneath the leather. A keyhole, a real lock. Why lock a diary unless it held something worth hiding? My fingers curled tightly around the book. I needed answers. The locket's note echoed in my mind. Blood doesn't define truth. Keep looking. What had she meant? I was mid-thought when my phone buzzed on the table. Celine. My stomach turned. I didn't pick up. 2 minutes later, another call. Same name, no message. Just a missed call notification like a warning shot. Then came the text. Where were you this morning? Victor's asking. I stared at it. Victor. Asking where I was? Since when did he care? I typed one word. Working. Left it at that. No emoji, no explanation. Just distance. A cold ripple passed through me. Why were they tracking me now after cutting me off? Something wasn't right. Celine never checked in, not unless she wanted something. I shoved the phone aside and looked back at the diary. I had a paperclip, a hairpin, and a small screwdriver from an old IKEA set. Not exactly high-tech tools, but I wasn't about to let a lock stop me. I sat hunched over the book, eyes squinting in the dim light, heart pounding so loud I could hear it in my ears. It took 20 minutes, a broken paperclip, and one small jab to the thumb, but finally, I heard it. A click. My breath hitched. I opened the diary slowly, afraid the pages might crumble from age, but they didn't. They were stiff and yellowed, but intact. The ink had bled in places. Some entries were faded. Others were scrawled in rushed, shaky lines. The first few pages were familiar, lists of books, favorite recipes, notes to herself about cleaning out the attic. Then the tone changed. Halfway in, a name appeared. Aim. The true heir must never know the full truth. I froze. The words were underlined, twice. My throat tightened. My hands were clammy. The next entry was dated just a week before Thalia's death. Her handwriting was weaker, looped less evenly. If Victor ever finds this, everything will fall apart. Celine already suspects too much. The boy, he's not Victor's. But she thinks I don't know. I always knew. Just as I know Elara must be protected from the legacy they fear. Boy? Was she talking about Orion? The baby Celine had right after she married Victor? My heart knocked against my ribs. Was it possible Orion wasn't Victor's son? I turned the page, blank, then another, blank, then one final line centered at the bottom of the page in deep black ink. She is the key to everything. I sat there in stunned silence. The words spun in my head, refusing to settle. The true heir, the boy, the legacy, and me, somehow the key to everything. I didn't know what it meant, not yet, but I was sure of one thing now. Talia had known everything, and Celine was still watching. The knock at the door jolted me back to the present. 3 slow taps, then silence. I crept toward the door, diary clutched tight against my chest, peered through the peephole. No one. But tucked beneath the mat was a plain white envelope, my name written on the front in typed print. No return address, no stamp. I picked it up with 2 fingers, heart racing. Inside, a single sheet of paper. Stop digging or else. The morning after the letter, I couldn't stop staring at it. That single line, typed and precise, sat on the table like it had weight. Stop digging or else. I kept it in the drawer under my socks, but I could still feel its presence, like a splinter under my skin. Someone had been watching, close enough to know where I lived, close enough to slide that envelope beneath my door without being seen. I didn't sleep much. My body ached from tension. My mind kept looping. Who? Why now? What were they afraid I'd find? But one thought rang louder than the rest. Celine. She had always known how to wear masks, sweet in front of neighbors, gracious with Victor, but beneath it all, sharp edges, veiled threats, the kind of coldness that made you second-guess your own instincts. I had to see her again. That afternoon, I returned to the house. My key still worked. Victor hadn't gotten around to changing the locks, probably too distracted by his public tantrum at my graduation. Inside, everything smelled too clean. Bleach, candles, polished wood, and fake lemon. The silence wasn't peaceful, it was staged. Celine was in the kitchen, dressed in one of her pale silk robes, hair tied back like she'd just stepped out of a magazine shoot. She looked up from stirring her tea, as if I were expected. "Elara," she said, like I was interrupting a brunch. "Back already?" "I need to grab some of my things," I said. "I won't stay long." She gestured toward the hallway with a flick of her spoon. "Be my guest." I turned to go, but her voice followed me, smooth and saccharine. "While you're here, we should talk, just us girls." I paused. Part of me wanted to walk out and never look back. But the part of me Thalia raised, the part that knew when something was off, stepped forward instead. I followed her to the dining room. The air was thick with the scent of mint tea and tension. Celine sat down, crossing her legs, gently rocking baby Orion's carrier with her foot. The baby was asleep, chest rising in shallow rhythm. She pushed a folded sheet of paper toward me. A list, my name, my part-time job, my recent library shifts, even the time I left last Thursday. I didn't touch it. She watched me with careful eyes. "Victor may have cut you off, but I still care, you know, about your safety, about your choices." "You spying on me now?" I asked. She smiled faintly. "Spying's such a harsh word. Let's call it keeping tabs." I clenched my jaw. My hands stayed at my sides, but I could feel my fingers curling into fists. "You've been very busy," she added. "Digging around in old boxes, sneaking through rooms that aren't yours. Do you really think Victor won't notice?" "I'm not scared of Victor," I said. "No," she said, tilting her head. "But maybe you should be scared of what you might find." Her tone sharpened with that last word, find, like she knew about the diary, or at least suspected. The baby stirred. She bent to adjust the blanket and whispered something I couldn't hear. For a second she looked maternal, soft. Then she turned back to me, eyes gleaming. "I remember when Thalia brought you home," she said. "A scrawny little girl with too many questions and no sense of her place." "I remember," I replied. "She gave me more love in 1 week than you've shown in a decade." Her smile froze. Thalia was weak. She let sentiment cloud her judgment. She trusted me. She trusted everyone. That's why she died confused, clutching fairy tales and secrets instead of fixing what mattered. There it was again, that icy precision Celine always wielded, words like scalpels. I stood, not trusting myself to sit a moment longer. "Thanks for the tea." She stayed seated, fingers still wrapped around the porcelain cup. "Elara," she said, voice low now, almost tender, "you're not ready for the truth. And frankly, some things are better left buried." I left without answering, but her words followed me out like a shadow, not ready for the truth. Who decides when someone's ready? Back at my apartment, I pulled the diary from my bookshelf again. Pages still open to that cryptic line, "She is the key to everything." I thought about the baby, about the name Thalia had circled once, Jorah. I didn't know who he was yet, but if the boy wasn't Victor's, then whose was he? That night, I barely touched dinner. I paced, scanned the pages again, reread Thalia's final entries until the ink blurred from fatigue. Then, I noticed something I hadn't before. Pressed between two pages was a dried petal, crushed, faintly pink and brittle. Beneath it, faint indentations, writing from the next page, but missing, ripped out. Someone had torn a page out of Thalia's diary, and not randomly. The gap was too neat, too clean. It had been deliberately removed. My phone buzzed on the desk. Unknown number. I stared. No voicemail, no text, just a single ring, and gone. A chill crawled up my spine. I checked the hallway, locked the door, double-checked the windows, then pulled my blanket tighter and sat on the couch with the diary in my lap. Was Celine behind the call? The threat? The missing page? Or was there someone else? Someone watching both of us? I didn't know yet, but I was done playing quiet. Whatever truth they buried, I was going to unearth it, even if it meant burning every lie with it. The night Victor called and asked me to come over for dinner, my gut screamed, "Don't go." But I went anyway. Not out of politeness, not out of nostalgia. I went because I needed to look him in the eyes. I needed to see if the man who raised me still had a soul buried somewhere beneath his polished facade, or if he'd buried it with Thalia. The dining room looked like a magazine spread. Candlelight flickered against crystal glasses, a bowl of fresh lemons sat artfully beside the butter dish, and the table, long antique mahogany, gleamed under the chandelier. Too perfect, too rehearsed, like a stage waiting for its scene. Victor stood at the head, carving lamb with mechanical grace. Celine sat across from an empty chair, mine, rocking Orion with one foot and sipping red wine with the other. The baby cooed softly, unaware of the war brewing around him. I took my seat slowly, the diary in my bag pressing against my hip like a second heartbeat. Victor looked up, knife still in hand. "Glad you came." I didn't answer, just reached for my water glass and waited. Dinner was quiet, too quiet. Forks tapped plates. Celine hummed softly to Orion. I forced a bite of lamb, chewing like it might unlock some long-buried answer, but nothing came until I set my fork down and pulled the diary out of my bag and dropped it on the table. The sound made Celine flinch. Victor's knife paused mid-slice. I kept my eyes on him. "What are you hiding?" Victor's jaw twitched. "I found Thalia's diary," I said. "It was locked. She mentioned the true heir. Said she knew Orion wasn't your son." Celine went still. Victor's hands dropped to his sides. He didn't reach for the diary, didn't even look surprised, just tired. "That woman loved puzzles," he said finally. "She always left trails no one was meant to follow. But she wanted me to follow this one." His silence was all the confirmation I needed. Celine tried to cut in, voice sharp. "You're twisting her words, Elara. That diary's nothing but an old woman's fantasies." "Then why do you look so nervous?" I asked, turning to her. Her face faltered, only for a second. Victor sat down slowly, like his legs were giving out beneath the weight of something he could no longer carry. "She shouldn't have written it down," he murmured. "It should have died with her." That cracked something in me. I leaned forward, fingers gripping the edge of the table. "She trusted you. And after everything she did, for both of us, you erased her like she didn't exist." He didn't argue, just stared at the flickering candle between us like it held a way out. "Do you know what she said to me in her final days?" I continued. "She whispered, 'Protect the truth.' And I didn't know what she meant, but now I do." Victor finally looked at me. His eyes were darker than I remembered, harder. "She wanted you to destroy us," he said, "even from the grave." "No, she wanted me to see through you." Celine slammed her wineglass down. "Enough of this!" Orion stirred, startled. She rocked him back to sleep, but her voice stayed razor sharp. "We took you in when you had no one. We gave you everything. And this is how you repay us? Accusations and conspiracy theories?" I looked straight at her. "You took the locket. You knew what was inside. You tried to erase Thalia's last message." She stood up fast, the chair scraping loud against the floor. "I don't have to listen to this." But I wasn't finished. "There's more," I said, opening the diary to the page that mentioned the locked drawer. She said Victor kept secrets, legal papers, adoption files. "What's in that drawer, Victor?" He stiffened, then gave Celine a glance. Brief but telling. That was all the confirmation I needed. "Some truths are better buried," he muttered. "No," I snapped. "Some truths are necessary, especially when they change everything." Victor's voice dropped low. "You don't understand what you're inviting in." My fingers clenched around the edge of the table. "I don't care," I said. "I want what's mine, and I want to know who I really am." A thick silence followed. Even Orion had gone quiet. Victor finally rose, straightened his sleeves, and said, "You're not ready." But this time I wasn't backing down. "I'm not a little girl anymore," I said. "And if you won't tell me, I'll find it myself." Celine's expression shifted. For the first time, I saw something close to fear. Good. I grabbed the diary and turned to leave. Victor's voice stopped me at the doorway. "You think Thalia was innocent?" he said softly. "She wasn't. She knew things you couldn't begin to understand." I turned slowly, my pulse loud in my ears. "She made choices too," he continued. "Ones that put you here, with us." His words rattled something in me, but I didn't let it show. I walked out, closing the door behind me with more calm than I felt. In the car, I sat with the engine off, breathing, shaking, watching the windows of the house I once called home. What was in that drawer? What else had they hidden? I didn't know yet, but I was done asking permission. Graduation day. The sky was the kind of blue that looked fake, too bright, too cloudless, too cheerful for what was about to happen. I stood just beyond the auditorium doors, hidden behind a red curtain, clutching my speech in one hand and the envelope in the other. The paper inside felt heavier than it should have, heavier than truth should ever feel. Through the small gap in the curtain, I could see rows of parents, faculty, and students fanning themselves, smiling like the world was still in one piece. Victor sat in the third row, straight-backed, unmoving. Celine beside him in a coral dress that clashed with her ice-cold demeanor. She rocked Orion in his stroller like she had nothing to fear. They didn't know what was coming. I didn't know either. Not all of it. But I was done waiting for someone to hand me closure. They called my name. Elara Vance with honors. I stepped into the light. Applause. Not wild, not thunderous, just polite claps from strangers who had no idea the floor was about to crack open. And then, before I even reached the stage, Victor stood. His voice boomed across the auditorium. "You should be ashamed to clap for her. She's not my daughter, not by blood, not by name, and she'll no longer be supported by this family." The room fell silent. Every eye turned toward me, phones raised, recording, capturing. Gasps echoed like glass breaking. Someone dropped a program. A woman in the back whispered, "Oh my God." I kept walking, one foot in front of the other, not fast, not slow, steady. I reached the podium, adjusted the mic with fingers that refused to tremble. Celine's face was bloodless. Victor sat down, folding his hands, jaw tight. I looked out into the sea of stunned faces and smiled. It wasn't a warm smile. It was the kind of smile you wear when everything's burning and you finally found the match. "Thank you for that introduction," I said into the mic. A few uncomfortable chuckles. The dean shifted in his chair. "I had a whole speech prepared," I continued, holding up the folded paper. "But something happened recently, something that made me realize this stage deserves the truth." I pulled the envelope from my folder. The one with the DNA results, the one with Cale's name. Celine's eyes widened. She stood abruptly, knocking over her purse. Lipstick and baby wipes spilled across the floor. Victor didn't move. He looked straight ahead like his world hadn't just buckled. I opened the envelope slowly, letting the silence stretch. "This," I said, holding it up, "is a paternity report." More gasps. Whispers now spread like wildfire. "It proves," I continued, "that Victor Drace is not the father of Orion. That child," I pointed toward the stroller, "belongs to Cale Drace." Celine's legs gave out. She dropped to her chair like her strings had been cut, hand clamped over her mouth. Victor finally moved. He rose again, face pale, lips pressed into a single angry line, but he said nothing. His hands were trembling. I let the silence sit, then added, "And for the record, he's known for weeks." The audience erupted. Some students looked thrilled, others horrified. Faculty members shifted uncomfortably. But one thing was clear. No one was looking at me like I didn't belong anymore. I walked away from the podium slowly. Each step felt like reclaiming something they'd stolen. Outside the building, sunlight felt too bright, too sharp, but I welcomed it. Let it burn through the numbness. Then I heard it, screaming, not from the crowd, from inside. A voice, a man's, roared, "You lied to me!" Another crash. A chair scraped hard against the floor. Someone sobbed. I didn't turn around. Let them deal with their own ruin. I reached the edge of the quad where a few students lingered, wide-eyed and whispering. Some looked at me with awe, others with fear. But no one looked away. I sat on a bench in the shade of a birch tree, heart still racing. Was I proud? Yes. Was I terrified? Also yes. Because that wasn't the end. That was just the beginning. I pulled the envelope from my bag and stared at the remaining pages, ones I hadn't read aloud. Thalia had written a second note, a backup copy, tucked behind the report. It had one line, "This isn't just about them. There's more. Keep looking." I closed my eyes and breathed. The crowd inside was still buzzing, the noise bleeding out into the open air like an aftershock, but under all of it, under the vengeance, the chaos, the exposure, I felt something else now, something raw, unfinished, something darker, the kind of truth that doesn't end in public shame, but in quiet ruin. My phone buzzed, a new message, no name, no contact, just, "You've made a mistake. You think you're safe now?" I stared at the screen, blood draining from my face. My fingers hovered over the reply field, but I didn't type. Instead, I looked up and saw someone across the lawn. A man, standing still, watching me, then turning away just as I rose from the bench. At first, I thought the man near the quad was just another parent. He had that look, middle-aged, clean jacket, sunglasses too dark for the afternoon light. But something about the way he moved, not toward me, not away, just lingering, watching, measuring. By the time I stood, he was already walking off campus, disappearing behind the hedges like smoke slipping through fingers. I didn't follow. I didn't need to. He wanted me to see him. That night, I double-locked my door and drew every curtain. I left the porch light on. And for the first time since the graduation, I pulled the dresser in front of my bedroom door. Childish maybe, but it gave me just enough illusion of control to close my eyes. Sleep came in fractured pieces. By morning, I found a new envelope slid under the door. This one wasn't typed. It was handwritten, a different pen, a different message. "You think exposing her ends this? You're in deeper than you know. Back off, Elara." My name. That was the part that sent ice crawling down my back. Whoever this was, they weren't guessing. They knew me. Enough to warn me. Enough to threaten me. I stared at the paper, tracing the tight script with my fingers. Why now? Why keep pushing back, even after the public explosion? Unless there was more. Much more. I sat at the kitchen table, rubbing my temples while the morning sun slanted in through the blinds. The diary sat beside me, worn now from so many nights flipping pages, searching margins, rereading Thalia's last words. The truth wasn't finished with me, neither were they. Later that day, I was shelving returns at the library when I caught a reflection in the glass wall by the stacks, someone standing outside. Still, facing the entrance but not coming in. I turned to look, but by the time I got there, they were gone. No one. Just the empty steps and a breeze that smelled like rain. Then I saw it. Tucked between the door and the frame, half folded, a third letter. Last warning. 3 words, no punctuation, just pressure. The paper was soft, like it had been handled too much, creased like it had been rewritten or reconsidered. I folded it again, slipped it in my bag, and locked it in my desk drawer without a word. But that night, I didn't go home. I went back to the Drace mansion. Not through the front door, through the side garden. The roses were overgrown. Thalia had planted them once, deep red, with petals that bled onto your fingers when you trimmed them, Victor never maintained them. Neither did Celine. Nature was reclaiming what they'd ignored, just like me. I used the key Talia gave me before she passed, one Victor never knew I kept. I crept in through the sunroom. The house was dark except for the flicker of the hallway nightlight, the one Talia had kept on for me when I used to get migraines. The drawer. Victor's desk in the back study hadn't moved an inch since she died. The handle stuck a little. I knelt, heart pounding, ears straining for footsteps that never came. Click! The drawer gave way. Inside, a folder. I flipped it open. Adoption papers, Thalia's signature, Victor's. But something else caught my eye. An old envelope, brittle with age. My name on the front, in Thalia's handwriting. Inside was a photo. A man with dark, tired eyes holding an infant. His arms cradled me like I was glass. He looked nothing like Victor, and everything like me. On the back, one word, Jorah, the name from the diary. My hands trembled. I didn't hear the footsteps until the floor creaked behind me. I turned. Victor stood in the doorway, backlit by the hall lamp. His expression unreadable, but his eyes, those same cold eyes from my graduation, burned through me. "You shouldn't be here," he said quietly. "I had to know," I said. "I deserve to know." He stepped forward, slowly. "You think truth will heal you? It won't. It'll ruin what's left." "Was that the plan?" I snapped. "Keep me close just long enough to control me?" His face twitched. "Just slightly." "You have no idea who you're provoking," he said, voice hardening. "I'm not afraid of you anymore." "I'm not the one you should be afraid of." That stopped me. "What does that mean?" He didn't answer. Instead, he reached over, took the photo from my hands, and stared at it. Then, he tore it in half. I gasped, lunged for it, but he stepped back. "I tried to protect you from this," he said. "No," I growled. "You tried to erase it." I grabbed the torn pieces, cradling them like they could still hold something sacred. Victor's eyes softened, just for a breath, then turned cold again. "Get out, Elara." I hesitated. I said, "Go." So I did, but not before slipping the rest of the papers, adoption file, notes, the torn envelope, into my coat. Outside, the air was thick with summer heat, the kind that pressed against your skin and clung to your clothes. I walked fast, head down, breath shallow. At the corner of the street, a car idled, dark windows. As I passed, the engine revved, and then the driver's window rolled down just enough for a single photo to slip out and fall to the sidewalk. I froze, picked it up. It was me at the library, yesterday, stamped in red. Stop. I stared at the photo on the sidewalk, my face captured mid-step outside the library, and felt something in me twist. Someone was watching, not metaphorically, not emotionally, literally watching. I picked up the photo with trembling fingers, eyes locked on the red stamp, "Stop," as if it were a sentence, not a word. The car had already turned the corner, disappearing into traffic like it was never there. But its message clung to me like wet smoke. I didn't go home. Instead, I drove to a strip mall 2 towns over, where the lights never turned off and the faces never lingered long enough to remember you. A discreet lab was tucked between a vape shop and a 24-hour dentist, behind a door marked DNA Connect. It didn't ask questions. That's why I came. The technician was young, maybe 20, wearing oversized glasses and blue gloves that crinkled when he moved. He didn't blink when I handed over a plastic baggie. Inside were 3 strands of hair, one from Victor's old comb, one from Celine's brush, and one clipped carefully from the tiny baby sock Celine kept in the nursery drawer. Orion's. I didn't include my own. Not yet. The tech logged it without judgment. "Results in 48 hours, he said, his voice soft but neutral. "Do you want email or hard copy?" "Hard copy." He nodded, typed something into the terminal, and said nothing else. Outside, the air felt thick and unbreathable, like I'd just wrapped myself in a net I couldn't cut through. I sat in my car until the windshield fogged from my own breath. This wasn't about proving Orion wasn't Victor's. I already knew that. This was about what came next, about what I'd do with the truth. 2 days later, I stood in the same lobby, clutching a sealed manila envelope with my name scribbled in black ink. My stomach churned. My mouth was dry. I waited until I was back in my apartment, the door locked behind me, blinds drawn. The silence felt heavy. Too heavy. I peeled the flap open like it might explode. Page 1. DNA mismatch. Victor Drace, 0% paternal match to Orion. Expected. Page 2. Secondary match analysis. Celine Drace, 99.98% maternal match. Also expected. Then the twist. Paternal match detected. 99.94%. Name, Cale Drace, Victor's brother. My heart stopped. The room tilted slightly as I reread the page, hands trembling, eyes scanning the fine print. It was official now, not rumor, not instinct, truth. Cale was Orion's father. Celine had betrayed Victor. But here's what made my blood run cold. Victor already knew. I found the proof in the next line. Prior results suggest prior knowledge and submission of Cale Drace's sample from client history profile. Victor had tested this before, quietly, on his own. He knew. He knew and stayed. He knew and built a life on the lie. Why? Why protect the woman who shattered him? Why preserve the illusion? Unless it gave him power. Control. I closed my eyes and thought back to every time Celine deferred to him. Every time Victor smirked when she backed down mid-argument. Every carefully placed insult disguised as affection. He was holding this over her, keeping her in check. I paced the room like a caged animal, the envelope still clutched in my hand. If Victor could live with that lie, what other truths had he buried? My thoughts spiraled until I stopped cold. Cale. I hadn't seen him in weeks. He hadn't shown his face since the graduation. Not a word, not a call. And yet, he was still on Victor's payroll, still listed on company documents, still silent. Unless, he wasn't just complicit, he was afraid, or being used. I texted him, "Need to talk, it's urgent. Meet me where it all started." I didn't expect a reply, but 10 minutes later the 3 dots popped up. Cale, library parking lot, tonight, no one else. The sky was ink dark by the time I arrived. A single street lamp buzzed above the lot, flickering faintly. Moths circled its glow like it was the last warmth left in the world. Cale leaned against his car, arms crossed, face hidden beneath a baseball cap. I pulled in slow, got out, kept my bag close. He didn't look up. "You always were too smart for your own good," he said. "Who's following me?" His jaw flexed. "I don't know." I stepped closer, holding up the photo. "Someone left this for me, after the letters, after everything. You expect me to believe you're not part of this?" "I'm not," he snapped, then caught himself. "Not anymore." I watched his eyes. They didn't lie, but they didn't say everything either. "You knew the baby was yours," I said. A long pause, then, "I figured, but Victor made it clear. He'd handle it." "By covering it up?" Cale looked down. "By owning it." I blinked. "What?" "Victor didn't just find out. He planned it. He set it up." The words hit like a gut punch. "What do you mean?" Cale met my eyes. For the first time, he looked truly afraid. He let it happen. He knew Celine would stray. She was already drifting. He pushed us together, then waited, then pulled the strings. "Why?" Cale didn't answer. Instead, he slid a flash drive from his pocket. "He's building something bigger than you realize," he said. "And he's been watching all of us, including you, since the beginning." I stared at the drive. "What's on it?" Cale backed away. "Be careful, Elara." Then he was gone. The street lamp buzzed louder now, like it was the only thing left trying to speak. I looked at the flash drive in my palm, heavy, still warm. Then I heard it. A creak. From behind the dumpster. I turned, heart slamming against my ribs, and saw the glint of a camera lens. The flash of the lens froze me. My first instinct was to run. Instead, I ducked behind Cale's car, clutching the flash drive so tight it bit into my palm. No footsteps, no voice, just the electric hum of the parking lot lamp buzzing above me. I peeked out. The dumpster stood silent. No shadows moving. No breath except my own. When I finally moved, it was slow, careful steps toward where I'd seen the glint. There was nothing. No camera, no person. Just the faint smell of grease and rain-damp cardboard. But someone had been there, and they wanted me to know it. Back home, I slammed the door and locked it twice. My fingers fumbled with the chain. I didn't realize I was holding my breath until I dropped my bag and gasped for air. The flash drive thudded to the floor. I stared at it. Cale had said it was important, that Victor was watching everyone. But was it a warning? or a trap. I slid it into my laptop. The screen flickered, loading files slowly, each one stamped with dates, names, locations, hidden folders, passwords, metadata trails that led back years. One folder stopped me cold. Thalia Rain, I clicked it open. Video files, PDFs, scanned letters, audio recordings. One labeled, Voice Memo 3, Final. I clicked. The sound crackled. Then her voice came through, tired, slow, but unmistakably Thalia. If you're hearing this, Elara, then they didn't stop you. They tried, I know they did, but you kept looking. I swallowed hard, heat rising in my chest. There are things I never got to say, not because I didn't want to, but because I was scared you'd get hurt. Victor wasn't always this cruel. Once he was just lost, but power changed him. And Celine? Celine was never who she claimed to be. She paused, coughed. There's a key. I left it with the locket. It opens the safe in the attic, behind the old painting. That's where the real truth is, not just about you, about Jorah. My breath caught. Jorah, the name again. He didn't leave by choice, Elara. Victor made sure of that. And if you're brave enough to open what's inside, then maybe you'll understand why I stayed silent for so long. The audio cut out. Silence. Then the soft sound of her crying. I closed the laptop gently, tears stinging my eyes. Not just from the message, but from the weight of everything I hadn't asked her before she died, the way I'd held her hand, thinking I still had time. The attic hadn't changed, the same pull-down ladder, the same creak with every step. I climbed slowly, flashlight clutched in one hand, the locket in the other. Dust clouded the air. Cobwebs clung to the slanted beams like warning signs. The painting leaned crooked above the far wall, a faded oil portrait of a winter lake scene. I'd never looked twice at it as a child. Now, I yanked it aside. Behind it, a small iron safe. I felt around the edges of the locket until I found it. Barely a bump, like a catch. I pressed. A hidden compartment opened. Inside, a tiny brass key. My fingers shook as I slid it into the lock. Click. The door opened with a groan. Inside were letters, dozens, bound together with a velvet ribbon nearly falling apart. Documents, photos, a birth certificate, mine. But it didn't say Elara Vance. It said Elara Rain, father, Jorah Marlowe, mother, Thalia Rain. I froze. My knees gave out and I sat on the dusty floor, the document trembling in my hands. Not adopted, not a foundling. Thalia wasn't just my mother in spirit. She was my biological mother. Everything I thought I knew, everything they told me, it was all a lie. Victor wasn't my rescuer. He was my jailer. He'd taken me, hidden me, controlled every piece of the narrative so tightly I couldn't even question it without shaking the walls of my world. And Jorah? Where was he now? Why had he disappeared from my life entirely? Had Victor... My stomach turned. I read through the letters in a daze. Thalia had written them year after year, addressed to me. Birthday notes, milestones, warnings, but never mailed, never handed over, all signed with love. One dated just a week before she died said, Victor thinks he's won, that by keeping you close he controls your future, but love is stronger than fear, and truth always finds its way out. She had planned to tell me. She had known her time was running out, and Victor had kept these from me anyway, burned her memory while preserving his own name. I pressed the letters to my chest and rocked forward, too numb to cry, too enraged to scream. By morning, I knew what I had to do. I copied the files from the flash drive onto a secure cloud folder, photographed every document in the safe, wrapped the letters and birth certificate in a Ziploc, and slipped them inside my coat. And I drove. Not to Victor, not yet, to the last person who could answer what came next. I pulled up to a nondescript building on the edge of town, a legal office with no name on the door, just a plaque that read, Marlowe and Finch, Estate Counselors. The receptionist looked up. Do you have an appointment? I need to speak with someone about Jorah Marlowe, I said. Her face froze. Who may I say is asking? Elara, I said. She hesitated, then rose and stepped into a back hallway. When she returned, a man followed, older, gray at the temples, sharp eyes, expensive watch. He stopped short when he saw me. Elara? His voice cracked. Who are you? I asked. He took a breath. I'm Caleb Finch, your father's lawyer. Jorah never stopped looking for you. My breath caught. He's alive? Caleb nodded. But if you're here, it means you found out the truth. And that means... He paused, scanning the lobby through the glass, then dropped his voice. We need to move fast. If Victor knows you're this close, you're not safe anymore. I followed Caleb Finch down a narrow hallway that smelled like old books and varnish. The air was cold, but not from the AC. It was the kind of chill that settled in places truth had been buried too long. Caleb's office was tucked in the back, paneled in dark wood, with floor-to-ceiling shelves and a desk too pristine to trust. He motioned for me to sit, then closed the blinds. Only then did he speak. Your father wanted to come forward years ago, he said, sitting across from me, but Victor made sure he disappeared. What do you mean, disappeared? He didn't kill him, Elara, but he buried him legally, used connections, threats. Jorah lost custody, credibility, everything. I felt my body curl inward. My nails dug into my palms, anchoring me to the chair. He was your mother's husband, Caleb said. They had you in secret while Victor and Thalia were finalizing their separation. But Victor never accepted the truth. He twisted it into betrayal. So Victor raised me to get back at them? To control the narrative, to control you. My throat tightened. He said he was protecting me. Caleb scoffed. No, he was protecting his empire. Thalia knew things, so did Jorah. But Victor had power, and when you were still a baby, he made them both disappear. Her into a marriage, him into exile. I shook my head. Thalia stayed. Why didn't she leave? She tried, he said, but Victor threatened to make you disappear too, so she stayed, for you. And slowly, he isolated her until she was nothing more than a memory in his house. The rage burned hot beneath my ribs. My hands shook as I reached into my coat and slid the birth certificate across the desk. Elara Rain, not Vance. Caleb stared at it, then nodded slowly. That's the name Victor never wanted anyone to see. I need proof, I said. Something that connects him to all of this, legally. Caleb reached into a locked drawer. He left something behind. Jorah did, just before he went underground. A record of Victor's offshore accounts, shell companies, a paper trail that proves he funneled money through Marlowe properties without consent. He handed me a thick file. My heart raced as I flipped through it. Dates, wire transfers, fake signatures. Victor had stolen more than just a child. He built his empire on someone else's ruin. But what caught my eye was a single page clipped to the back. A will, signed by Thalia, updated 2 months before her death, leaving everything to me, not Victor, not Orion, just me, and it had never been filed. I looked up, breath caught. He hid this too, Caleb nodded, because if it had been filed, everything in Thalia's name, including her share of Victor's holdings, would have transferred to you. And now? He hesitated. It's still valid, but bringing it forward, it would blow everything open. I closed the file and stood, my legs shaky. That's the plan. That night, I returned to the Drace mansion, but not to knock, to break in. The side door was still loose from the last time I'd used it. I crept through the dark kitchen, every step calculated, nerves fraying. I knew where Victor kept the drawer. I knew the cabinet beneath the whiskey shelf, double-locked, key always tucked behind the mirror in the guest bath. It was there, just like I remembered. Inside, adoption records, financials, passports, and a burner phone. I turned it on. There were only 2 numbers saved. One was labeled K, the other Shadow. No texts. But the call log showed Victor had been in touch with both, recently. Footsteps upstairs froze me. Not loud, not rushed, just deliberate. I grabbed the documents, killed the phone, and slipped back out into the night. Back at my apartment, I spread everything across the table. The will, the offshore documents, the burner phone, my birth certificate. All of it forming a picture I could finally see clearly. Victor hadn't just manipulated my childhood. He'd orchestrated an empire by burying lives. Mine, Jorah's, even Thalia's. And for the first time I understood, this wasn't just about betrayal. It was about power. And I had more of it than he thought. I copied everything, made digital backups, created a dead man switch. If something happened to me, the documents would go to 3 journalists and a lawyer. Then I drafted a letter. 1 sentence. I know everything. Meet me at the cabin. No lies this time. I mailed it to Victor the next morning and waited. By dusk, my phone buzzed. No name, just a message. I'll be there, alone. I drove to the family cabin just past the state line, the one we used to visit in summers when pretending we were happy. The air smelled of pine and smoke. The lake shimmered under a low-hanging moon. My headlights cut across the gravel as I pulled up and parked beneath the old oak tree. I waited inside, watching the road, every muscle tight, heart thudding like a metronome in my throat. When he finally pulled in, I didn't move. Victor stepped out of his black car like he always did, calm, composed, confident. But this time, he didn't look like a man in control. He looked like a man preparing for war. I opened the door, let the cool night air rush in, and stepped out to face him. "You summoned me," he said, almost amused. "No, I invited you to the truth." He stepped closer, eyes narrowing. "I always knew you'd turn," he said, "but I didn't think you'd get this far." I held up the flash drive. "I have everything." He smiled, but there was no warmth. "You think this ends with a file?" "No," I said. "It ends with the truth." He glanced toward the trees behind me, and in that moment I realized he hadn't come alone. Victor's eyes flicked to the trees behind me. It was subtle, barely a glance, but I knew that look. I'd seen it before in boardrooms and dinner tables, right before he twisted the knife. He hadn't come alone. The forest that wrapped around the cabin pulsed with shadows. I couldn't see anyone, not yet, but the air shifted, heavy, braced, like the moment before a storm when the world holds its breath. I stepped back. "Who's out there?" I asked. Victor didn't answer, just smiled, tight-lipped, cold. My grip tightened on the flash drive in my jacket pocket. "If you brought someone to scare me, don't bother. I've already survived worse." He moved closer, slow, controlled, like a man who'd already rehearsed how this would end. "You always thought this was about fear," he said, "but it's about leverage." I held my ground. "And what exactly do you think you're holding now?" He reached into his coat. I flinched, but he only pulled out a folded piece of paper. He tossed it toward me. It floated like an afterthought, landing in the dirt near my feet. I didn't pick it up. "Go ahead," he said. "Read it." I crouched slowly, never taking my eyes off him. The paper was creased, damp at the corners. I unfolded it and froze. It was an affidavit, Thalia's signature, notarized, stating that Victor Drace was my legal guardian, sole decision-maker in her absence, and that Mr. Marlowe has forfeited any parental claim to Elara due to abandonment. My stomach turned. Fake. It had to be. "She never signed this," I said. But my voice trembled. Victor raised an eyebrow. "Didn't she?" The paper shook in my hands. "She left me everything. She wrote letters. She recorded messages. I have proof." "And yet," he said, voice smooth as poison, "courts don't care about bedtime stories. They care about paper, records, signatures. This is what survives." My mouth went dry. He was covering every angle, building a legal net around me, even now. "You don't get to erase people just because you can forge documents," I snapped. Victor's smile thinned. "No, Elara, I erase people because I can discredit them." He took a step closer. "Jorah's past, unstable, financial collapse, rumors of abuse. Thalia, depressed, sick, easily manipulated. You, emotional, obsessive, prone to outbursts." He was painting a portrait, one he'd rehearsed in courtrooms, in media statements, in hushed conversations with people too afraid to challenge him, but he didn't know what I had. "I've got the original will," I said, "her signature. Witnessed and sealed. You buried it. But it survived." He didn't flinch, didn't deny it. Instead, he said, "And if I go down, so does Celine. So does Kale. Even Orion." I blinked. "You're threatening your own child?" He shrugged. "I'm protecting my name." There it was, not family, not legacy, name. I felt the anger rise in me like heat under my skin. My pulse thundered. "You always needed control," I said, "even if it meant destroying everything around you." "I built everything around me." The air between us cracked. Behind him, a twig snapped. We both turned. Selene emerged from the trees, baby carrier in hand, hair wild, eyes bloodshot. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. Victor stiffened. "What are you doing here?" She didn't answer. She set Orion's carrier gently on the porch steps. The baby stirred, but didn't cry. Then she straightened. "I followed you," she said. Victor's voice dropped. "You weren't supposed to." Celine looked at me, then back at him. "She deserves to know." I blinked. "What?" Celine stepped forward, hands trembling. "I kept the truth buried for years, Elara, because I thought he'd protect us, but he used us, all of us." Victor's face turned to stone. "You're playing a dangerous game, Celine." "No," she whispered. "I'm ending it." She reached into her coat. Victor moved, fast, too fast, but Celine wasn't pulling a weapon, just a small black binder. She threw it toward me. It landed at my feet. Inside, court documents, medical files, a recorded deposition from a whistleblower who worked with Victor's company, evidence, proof, everything. Victor lunged toward her, but I was faster. I threw myself in front of her, arms outstretched. "Touch her," I warned, "and the entire file goes live." He froze, breathing hard, furious. "I'll ruin you," he said, voice low and guttural. "You already tried," I said, "and I'm still standing." He looked between us. Celine pale but steady, me burning with resolve, Orion asleep behind us, and for the first time, Victor Drace looked small. He turned slowly, walked back to his car, got in, and drove away. The silence that followed was thick, like dust settling after an explosion. Celine collapsed onto the steps. I sat beside her. Orion gurgled softly, unaware of the war he was born into. She looked at me, really looked. "I didn't protect you," she said. "I should have." "You protected him," I replied. She nodded, then whispered, "Not anymore." We sat like that for a long time, just the three of us, survivors, but not yet free, because the final truth hadn't surfaced, not completely. The flash drive still held files I hadn't opened. One folder locked with a password I didn't recognize, labeled J.M. Jorah Marlowe. What else had Victor buried? And was my real father still out there? The morning after the cabin confrontation, the world looked ordinary. Birdsong, light rain on the window pane, the slow drip of coffee into a cracked ceramic mug. But nothing inside me felt ordinary. I sat at my kitchen table, the flash drive on one side, the black binder from Celine on the other. In the middle, my mother's will, my real birth certificate, and a dozen pages of Victor's lies, now unraveling like a web cut loose from its anchor. It should have felt like triumph. Instead, it felt like weight. Thick, cold, unshakable. My phone buzzed. Caleb Finch. He'd traced the encrypted folder on the flash drive, JM. It wasn't just Jorah's initials. It was a private server connected to an old offshore account in Jorah's name. And inside that digital vault, a video, a confession. I opened it. The screen flickered, then settled on a man seated behind a desk, older than I expected. His hair was silver at the edges, but his eyes were mine. He looked into the camera like he was afraid and brave at the same time. "Elara, if this ever reaches you, it means I failed to protect you. I tried to fight him, I did, but Victor's reach was deeper than I imagined." He cleared his throat, hands shaking slightly. "Talia stayed with him to shield you. I stayed away for the same reason, but I never stopped watching. I never stopped loving you. And if you're hearing this, then I know you found the truth." The video ended, and I sat there unmoving, the sound of the rain the only thing anchoring me to the moment. He was alive, or had been, but no one could confirm where he was now. No trace, no activity. Like he vanished the moment he hit record. Victor had buried him in every way that mattered, but I was still here, and I had everything I needed. Later that week, I walked into Victor's office for the last time. He sat behind his desk, the empire he built literally reflected in the skyline behind him, polished, composed, pretending. I didn't sit. I set the binder on his desk. "I'm not here for revenge," I said. He didn't reach for it. He just looked at me, quietly, like he was waiting to see what version of me had finally arrived. "I'm here to finish it," I continued. "The documents, the drive, the will, everything's been duplicated, stored, protected. If anything happens to me, 3 reporters and 1 federal investigator get a copy." Still, he said nothing, but his jaw tightened. "I don't want your money. I don't want your name. I just want you to disappear. From me, from Orion, from everything Thalia ever tried to save. I waited, and finally he spoke. You think this makes you clean? No, I said. It makes me free. He leaned back, the facade cracking just enough to show the man beneath it, and for the first time I saw him not as the villain, just as a man who lost, then lost again, and decided control was easier than grief. I turned to leave, but paused. I forgive you, I said, not because you deserve it, but because I do. That was 3 months ago. The court reinstated Thalia's original will. The estate is now mine. What's left of it. Celine filed for divorce and moved across the state line with Orion. We talk sometimes, not often, but enough. Cale disappeared. Again. Caleb believes Jorah is still alive, somewhere under a new name. I haven't found him yet, but I will. I visit Thalia's grave every Sunday. I bring roses, deep red, like the ones she planted, the ones Victor let wither. I sit under the oak tree, letters in my lap, and read them out loud. Not for her, for me. Because stories like mine aren't about vengeance. They're about reclaiming the truth. And when everything else falls apart, that is what remains. If this story moved you, if you felt seen or shaken, if you cried or cheered, don't forget to subscribe, like, share, and comment your thoughts below. I'd love to hear your take. For more stories like this, of truth, survival, and the strength to fight back, make sure to check out the next video. I'll be right here waiting to tell it.